Welcome back to Drafting with Mark, and in this video we're going to be discussing how to make a sheet metal part using Inventor. Now, one of the benefits of using sheet metal is that you will create a flat pattern. So in this video we're going to take a look at how to create the 3D model, the flat pattern, as well as doing the drawing. So if that's something that you're interested in, go ahead and stick around. Okay, so as I'm creating this part, when I get to the Inventor portion of it is that I'm going to make some mistakes intentionally, mainly with the radius here. So I'm going to let Inventor pick the radius, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to explain how you can make this radius customized. But by default, some sheet metal stuff is going to happen for us, and it's going to give us some typical bends and stuff of that nature, so we're not going to have to worry about that. But I will show you how to create that manually. So let's jump over to Inventor and get started. Okay, so here I have Inventor opened up, and it kind of doesn't matter which version that you're using. I'm using 2024, but you can click this new icon here and it will bring you this dialog box, or you can select the new button here if you have your user system looking like mine. So I just clicked on the new, and what we're going to be looking at today is going to be the sheet metal millimeter IPT. So I'm just going to go ahead and double click on this, and then I'm going to give Inventor a little time to kick over and get ready to start modeling. Okay, so once you have Inventor set up, and it should look like this, the ribbon should change and looks like a sheet metal ribbon. One of the things that I'm going to do first is that I have to define the default, right? I have to tell Inventor what the thickness of my sheet metal is. So I'm just going to click on where it says sheet metal defaults, and once I click this, it's going to give me a dialog box. Now, it already has a basic thickness already put in, and you can see that thickness here. So if this is going to be the common thickness that you're going to use, even for your bends and things of that nature, you can leave this thickness here. Otherwise, you can change it, customize it here by selecting here, and then it'll change this thickness to whatever you like, right? Another way, and the kind of preferred way that I would do it, is I would click on the pencil here and open up the defaults. So we're going to sit back and wait for another dialog box to open. And when it does, you see here that I can just type in whatever thickness I want. So if I want that to be 1 millimeter thick, which is going to be for this drawing here, that's the one that I'm going to use. Go ahead and hit the save and close. And now you're going to see when you come back to this dialog box that that thickness is changed, right? So you got two different options of doing that. Once you have your thickness changed, go ahead and hit cancel. All right. So like with anything that we created before, we usually start off with the sketch. So I'm just going to go here and click Start a Sketch. And then I'm going to pick the XY plane. Once I pick the XY plane, I'm going to go ahead and draw a circle. I'm just going to click it here. Let's go ahead and draw a line that goes straight across. And escape out of this. Now I want this midpoint to be at that center. So I'm going to use a coincidence. I'll select the midpoint here, and then I'll select on this center point. Let's go ahead and do some trimming. So I'm just going to trim off the access parts. And then I'm going to start putting this into position, right? So let's go ahead and use the dimension. And let's select this line, and then our center point here. I'm going to click and place it and type in 8.5. I'm going to go ahead and give this a radius. So I'm going to click here, and the radius is going to be 6.5. All right, now I also want to move this in line here. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to first check and see if this point is vertical to this one. So I'm going to select the vertical icon here, and you can see I get those dotted lines that are going vertical to my screen. I'll select this center point, and then I'll click that center point. So the good news is now that when I hit escape, if I look down here in the bottom right corner, it says it's fully constrained, but I'm not kind of finished yet creating this contour flange that I need. And I'll try to explain why I'm doing it this way as opposed to kind of sketching out some of the other things. Let's go to the line command now, and I'll click here. And I'm just going to make this line extremely long, and I'm going to do this on both sides. So I'm going to make it intentionally longer than what it needs to be. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to apply an equal constraint to both of these lines. So I'm just going to tell it equal select this line to this one. All right, and then finally, what I need to do is I need that line to stop right here at this center point. So I got many different options I can use. I can put a dimension on this line, or I can tell it that I want this line to be horizontal to that. So it just depends on how clean you want your drawing to look. I'm just going to select it and make it horizontal because I like things to be right on this base. So I'm going to select the horizontal option. I'll select this endpoint, and then I'll click on this center point here. All right, now if I hit escape, I'm looking at the bottom right. It says fully constrained, but I'm going to do one more thing just so I can help Inventor out. I'm going to select this line here, and then I'm going to make it on the construction edge. All right, let's go ahead and hit escape, and now you can see that that line is dotted. I'm going to go to finish sketch. Now once Inventor is set up, now I have two different options here. In this video, we're going to be using a contour flange. In another video, I will show you how to use a face, but this one is going to be a lot easier to use a contour flange. So I'm going to go to contour flange. It should automatically select my lines that I have. Now the next thing I like to do is usually take a look at the front view of this, right? So now here I can see which way my lines are going in reference to my radius dimension here. So you see the radius dimension, and on my drawing, this is the inside. So what I'm going to do is reverse the direction by selecting this icon here. And now you see that this is now the inside and my part flips to the outside, right? And then you got some other things here. Let's take a look at this back in the isometric view. And then I need to tell it how wide this thing is, right? So the width of this should be 6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it that it's going to be 6 by selecting this number here. And then I can define how I want this to be, so I want it to go in one direction. Do I want it to go the other direction? Or I can do it symmetrical or asymmetrical. I'm just going to select the symmetrical icon here. And I'm going to hit OK. And you can see that it did create that contour flange that I need. Now I will apologize a little bit. I see that these colors are about the same with each other. So I did change my background color here. But hopefully you can still see that the part as opposed to the background. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and add a flange onto here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and select flange. And then we have to decide, what do I want that flange to bend from, right? And what I mean by that is that I have a flange here. Do I want to bend it from this edge or this edge on this side? So whichever direction do I want that to go? And I'll give you an example of what I mean. I'm going to select this back inside edge. And when I do that, now I'm going to take a look at the front view. You can see that this is where it's pivoting from, right? So I can change the direction or how I want this to behave. And over here in this dialog box, that's everything that it's telling me to do, right? So I selected the edge. The next thing I need to do is tell it what bend position. So am I going from that edge? Is it going to bend up? If I select here, it can start at the bottom of it. It can kind of work its way in the middle of it. And then it'll kind of figure out a tangent point of it. But by default, I usually leave mine set to this front. The next thing I need to do is define the distance. Well, according to the drawing, I do have a distance, and that distance is 8.5, right? So now you see that that is 8.5. That's the way that I kind of want it to go, but I want it to flip the other direction. So I'm going to select here, and now it's going to flip it this direction. These bottom ones here tell me how do I want to define this, right? Do I want that distance to be measured from this back edge to here? Or do I want it to go from the front edge to here or in the middle and things of that nature? So that's what all of this is telling me here. So I can go from here. I can go here, which you'll see that it does extend. So it's pulling from this edge. I can kind of get right here in the middle of it or whatever the tangent of it is. Or I can kind of, do some other things to it. But I'm just going to leave it at defined here. And I'm going to verify that that is indeed the distance that I want, right? I'm going to get OK right now, but I'm going to come back and add that other flange on here in a second. So I'm going to go to OK. Let's go ahead and put this back in an isometric. And this is one of the things I do with my drawings anyway. I like to check and make sure that that distance is what it is, as opposed to verifying that later when I get to the drawing portion. So I'm going to go to Inspect. Then I'll choose Measure. I'm going to select this face here. And then I'm going to select right here on my view cube. And then I'll select that face. And you will see that that did come up 8.5. So I do have the setting correct on this one. Let's go ahead and hit Done. Then I'm just going to click back on the Sheet Metal tab. if I needed to change that, I can go back and change it, which I'm going to go ahead and add this other flange to it. So this is one of those nice and neat features about using sheet metal, is that I don't have to add another flange over here. I can go back to this flange here and double click it. It's going to bring open this dialog box, right? So, and make sure when you double click on this, don't double click on the words here, double click on the icon. When it does this, I'm going to come back up to where it says select. I'm going to select this inside edge here, and you're going to see that it will put the other flange there, right? Now, I'm purposely messing something up here. I'm leaving this radius set to whatever is predefined. I can redefine that, and I'm going to show you how to do that later, but there's no secret in hiding it. I'm just going to change the value here. All right, so let's go to hit OK. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put these radius or radii around my parts here. So I'm going to go up here to where it says corner round. I'm going to give it a radius, which is 2. And then I'm going to select these little vertical parts, right? Well, first let me go back and select the word select. And when you have that arrow there, that's kind of your sign to let you know that you're able to select edges. I'll go ahead and select these vertical lines here. Just kind of flip it around one more time and get this edge. So all of those edges are now created. Go ahead and hit OK. Next thing, let's go ahead and put our holes into this. So I'm just going to select this face. And then I'm going to select the icon with the green plus. Or if you don't have that little icon there, you can also select this face and then go and physically select this icon here. Both will do exactly the same thing. Now I like to rotate mine around to where the words top are in the right orientation. So I'm just going to select here. I'm going to go ahead and draw a line. And then I'm going to select that midpoint. And then I'm just going to draw a line going that direction. Go ahead and hit escape. Let's go ahead and put a dimension on that. And that dimension is 2.75. Alright, I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side here. I'm going to select line. I'm going to go find the little green dot here, which is the midpoint. I'm going to come this direction. I'll click, go to escape, and then I'm going to apply an equal constraint to both of those lines. Alright, so once those are done, I'm going to go ahead and select point. I'm just going to place them at this endpoint and at this endpoint. Now, since I'm using the hole command, I don't have to make these lines construction, because in the hole command, it's going to only look for these points. So that's going to be kind of optional up to you if you want to go back and change those lines and make them construction. But in this point, it's really irrelevant. So I'm just going to select finish sketch. I'll go to the hole command, and it's going to automatically find these two centers. Right? And then I'm going to change the diameter here to 3. Make sure that you have it going through all. And if yours did not select both of these points, you can physically select them, right? So underneath the geometry input here, let's go ahead and expand that. And then I can select here, and then it'll go ahead and let me select more points. So if yours did not automatically select that, that's another way that you can go and select them. Go ahead and hit OK. And now you have your holes there, right? So I have one more thing that I have to do here. I have to make a cut going through this. So over here in my browser, I'm going to expand the origin, and then I'm going to look for the plane that's going vertical through there. And in this case, it's going to be the YZ plane, or I can also tell it from my looking at my UCS here, is that the YZ plane is the one that I want. So I'm going to select here. I can click the create a sketch icon, or like I did before, is come up here. I'm just going to create a sketch on it. Now once I'm going to pull this down a little bit, and I'm going to choose the slice geometry option, which is located here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to rectangle, and I'm going to create a 2-point center rectangle. I'll click here and kind of place it here. Alright, so escape out of this. I know that I have a center point here at the bottom, and I have this one, and I want these two to be in line with each other. So I always like to test these because sometimes they don't act right. So I'm going to select the vertical one, and I'm trying to look on my screen, and you see those red lines are going horizontal. So that means I have to pick the horizontal one in order to get the vertical. So I'll select here, and now you'll see that it is a vertical line. I'm going to select this center point here, and then this center point here, right? So I'm selecting both of those, and that'll keep them in line with each other. Let's go ahead and hit escape. let's put a couple of dimensions on this. So I'm going to go to dimension, click here, and that dimension is going to be 4. And then I have to tell it how tall it is from here, right? So I'm going to put a dimension from this bottom line here to that center point. Click here, and that distance is 8.5. Now the last thing I need to do, as long as this is past this line here, so you have some options here if you want to make sure that that always happens, just in case you ever change your contour line. What I usually do is I'll put a dimension and I'll kind of select from here, and I'm trying to see if that top edge would come in, and it looks like it didn't in this case. Let's go ahead and hit escape, and let's see if I can project that in. Let's go to project geometry, and then I can select, let me zoom in a little bit more. I can select this top face here, go ahead and hit escape, and now when I put a dimension from this line to this top face, let's just call it 1 or 2. No matter what happens, so if I grow my contour flange, this will always keep that distance, right? Last step I'm going to do here is I'm going to select that line that I just created, and then I'll go ahead and place it on the construction layer. Let's go ahead and zoom the extents here, and then hit finish sketch, because I'm looking down here at the bottom, it is fully constrained. So when I finish sketch, I'm going to select the word cut. So I'm going to cut through this, right? Now it's asking me what I want to cut. So what I want to do is I want to have a distance that goes through all. And then I'm going to send this thing symmetrical because I want it to go both ways. Then I'll hit OK. All right. So now the kind of modeling portion is done, right? So what I'm going to do is just show you how a flat pattern look, and it's really simple in this program. All you got to do is hit the create flat pattern, and you're going to see that it will indeed give you a flat pattern, right? Rather quickly. In order to go back to the folded model, just click on go to folded model, and it'll take you back. So now I have a flat pattern, which is located here, and I have the actual model, which is up here. Let's go ahead and collapse that. All right. So now we can do the drawing portion, but before I do the drawing portion, you're always going to have to save your part. So I'm just going to click on the save icon here. Let's go ahead and name this as, let's call it a contour example, right? So let's call it a contour, E-X-A-M-P-L-E. So it's a contour example, right? Looks like I got rid of my dot on my IPT there. I'm going to hit save. Now I can see that the word save is here at the bottom. Next, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to click on the new icon. Remember, that brings open this dialog box. And I'm going to choose this ANSI millimeter, IDW, right? So we're going to create a drawing. So I'm going to select here and hit create. Give it a little second to switch over to the drafting. And hopefully you're kind of liking this a little bit easier. I know we did the AutoCAD 2D portion and that took us a while, but we're kind of flying through this one. We're already at the drafting portion of it. And another thing is that you're going to see is that it's going to be easy to change some things. All right, so the title block here at the bottom I don't need, so I'm just going to select here, do a right click and hit delete. And then I'm going to change this to a B size. So I'm going to select where it says sheet 1. So I'm going to left click on that, and then I'll do a right click, and then I'm just going to go to edit sheet. And I'm going to change the size of this to a B size. Go ahead and hit OK. Next, I'm ready to start bringing in my drawing here. So I'm just going to go to base. And since my drawing was open here, that's the one that's going to assume that I want to create. I'm just going to left click and drag this by placing my cursor right here in the middle. I'm going to left click on one of these corners, left click and hold, and I'm just going to expand this out a little bit. That looks about right to me. It's a 5:1. I'm going to pull this up just a hair. And if I need to make it a little bit bigger, you can kind of play with this a little bit, and you can see that that 10 is too big. Or I can manually go in here and type in something like 6:1 or 7:1. But I'm going to leave it at 5:1. Go ahead and hit OK. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create my other views here. Let's go ahead and pull this over just a hair. So I'm going to come here, left click and drag this over. Let's go to project it. And you'll notice that I had this view already selected, right? So what I mean by that, and I'm going to escape out of this, is that if I don't have any view selected and I go to project, it's going to ask me to select a view. You can kind of combat that if you pre-select this view and then just go to project. So it just depends on how you want to do it. I'm going to click a view above it. So left click here. I'll left click over here. And then I'm going to create an isometric by left clicking here. Now once I'm done creating all the views that I need, you have to do a right click and hit the word create. Once you do that, all of your views should be created. Next thing I like to do is, and I kind of keep my same AutoCAD themes going, is I will always put my center marks on as my next part. So I'm going to go to where it says annotate. Then I'm going to click on my center marks. And I'm just going to start placing my center marks on my drawing. Then I'll use the bisecting center line here to place my other ones, right? So I'm just going to choose these two lines. And I'm going to come back and extend that. Zoom in down to here, select these two lines. And I'm just kind of making sure I get all of my center lines going through. Alright, so I have all of my center marks. Let's go ahead and escape. And then I can go ahead and start putting my dimensions on, right? So I know that when I start putting my dimensions on, they're going to look a little weird, but that's okay. Remember that we're going to go ahead and change the style of it later. So let's go ahead and start putting our dimensions on. So I'll go to dimension. And remember also another kind of neat trick in here is that I'm just going to select these two first. And it's not going to apply to this one. Where these snap at, try to keep them on these snap points, right? Because that'll help you line up things. So I'm just going to click here. And I'm going to do the same here at the bottom. Now, I get a dialog box that appears. If you don't want this dialog box to appear every time you do it, go ahead and select this check here and uncheck it. And then hit OK. And next, when I put another dimension onto this drawing, that dialog box won't appear. So if I put a dimension from here to here and come down to here, it's going to create a dimension and that box won't appear. If you want that to come back, escape out of the dimension command, double click on one of these dimensions, and then check this box again. Right? So for what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this box unchecked for now, so I can put all of my dimensions on without having that box come up again. So I'm going to go to dimension again. I'm just going to select this endpoint and this endpoint. And this is where those snaps come in play. Now, if they're not lining up, you can always go and touch a dimension. And once you get the tracking off of it, then do your left click. All right, another one of those secrets about Inventor is that I want my dimension to be on the top side of this. So when I select my dimension, I'm going to click this top part as my first point. Then I'll click the bottom one. And my dimension will be here at the top. Let's go ahead and put a radius dimension on this. I'm going to click here, and I zoomed in on purpose because sometimes you'll get this little icon here that kind of pops around like this, right? The way you fix that is that you come down and you kind of rotate to the inside of here, and once your arrowhead is on the inside, then you kind of pull this out going this direction. Then do your left click here, and you can see that this number is wrong. Our drawing has a radius of 2. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that right now. I'm just going to hit escape. I'm going to go back to my drawing here, or my model, by selecting this icon here. Over here in my browser, I'm going to find where I created that flange at, right? And those were created with a contour flange. So I find it here. I'm just going to double click on the icon here, not the words. Once I double click the icon, a dialog box should appear. And then here in the bend radius, I'm going to change this to 2. Once I hit 2, it's really a good idea to hit the save button. And then when I jump back over to my drawing, you're going to see that it did update and it did change that. Okay, so let's go ahead and put the rest of our dimensions on. I'm going to put a dimension on this inside radius here, this outside one here, and then I'm just going ahead and putting all of my dimensions on. And like I said, it's a really good idea sometimes to turn that box off so it don't keep popping up every time you need it. Okay, let's take a look up here, and then we're going to start doing our dimensions here. So I want my dimension to be on the outside, so I'm going to select this endpoint first, and then that point. Go ahead and place my dimension. Let's do these two endpoints. And then we want our dimensions on the outside, so we're going to select that endpoint first, and then our center mark. Likewise on the other side, outside first. Let's go ahead and put our radii that are located here. And then we have a diameter that's located here. Put a few more dimensions on this, so I'm going to select the dimension from here to here. I do need a dimension here at the bottom that tells it the overall thickness, or the overall width of my drawing here. I'm going to select the dimension here. Now remember, up here we want our dimension to be on the outside, so select the outside point first. And then we're going to place our dimension here. Alright, and now remember, you can also add that flat pattern, and the way that I'm going to do that is I'm just going to create a new sheet. So I'm going to go back to Place Views, select the word New Sheet, then I'll go to Base. When this dialog box appears, I'm just going to click Flat Pattern. Then I can adjust this flat pattern however I see fit. Let's go ahead and kind of move this around and hit OK. Alright, so now that's one way of creating a quick flat pattern for you. If I go ahead and put just a couple of dimensions on this, I can tell it that the overall length of this thing should be here. I can also locate where the bends are. And I'm just kind of giving some rough dimensions here. And you remember that this from the front should be still sitting at 4. The location from here to here gives me that distance. And you can see that I can do a lot of things here, just kind of on my flat pattern here. That'll give me the overall shape of this, right? If I wanted to, I can also go ahead and put my center marks that are located on here. And I'm just doing some kind of quick dimensions on this. And I'm sorry, I meant to put that dimension on the outside. This should be exactly the same as on the folded model. That should still say 2.7, right? And let's add one more, just since we're kind of throwing some dimensions around. All right. So really nothing extravagant here. This is kind of totally, optional. Some places will require you to make a flat pattern, while other places will not. But that's going to be strictly up to, what you're trying to achieve here. Let's go back to sheet 1. So make sure that you're not in any command by hitting escape. I'm just going to double click back on the sheet 1 icon, and that's going to bring me to here. Okay, now I'm ready to start setting up my dimensions. Let's go ahead and extend this before I forget about it. So I'm just going to left click and drag these up when I get to center points. Okay, that looks good enough for me. And you can also extend this line down if you kind of want more of a plus there. That's strictly up to you. It's kind of your preference. All right, and I keep forgetting all the little things I need to do. Let's go ahead and double click on this icon here. Click on the word Precision Tolerance, and then tell it that this is a reference dimension, and hit OK. All right, let's go ahead and fix the style of all of our dimensions. So the next thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and escape out of this. I'm going to go to Manage, Style Editor. It should bring open the dimension or the dialog box that should have all of the stuff that Inventor is pulling from in order to basically set up the dimensions, arrowheads, text height, all of that stuff. So I'm going to give it a second for that to load. And once it loads, I'm going to have the default millimeter one selected because that's the way we use this drawing. We had our template set up for millimeter, so the default one is going to be that one, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and double click on this one. And this should be really easy. I'm going to go ahead and suppress the trailing zeros, right? We don't have any alternate units. We don't have anything to change in the display. We're going to go to the, let's see, text. And underneath text, I want my dimensions to be linear here. In this drop down, I want linear here. And on this final one, I want all of those to be linear. Everything else in here should be okay. If I go to Save and Close, and now when I zoom into my dimensions, you see that they did automatically adjust. One of the last things I need to do is go ahead and put some text on of all of this. So I'm just going to double click this dimension. And I'm double clicking the words here. It brings me open to this dialog box. I'm going to select the word text. Go ahead and hit enter. And then I'll start typing in what I want. So 2 places.
And then I like to have this centered. So what I usually do instead of leaving it this way is I'll click the centered icon here and hit OK. And I'm just going to kind of do that around the rest of these. So I'm just going to hit here. This is going to be 4 places. Go ahead and center this. On this dimension here, I'll double click this one. I'll tell it that it needs to be 3 places. Once again, I'll go ahead and center it. Hit OK. And now this, I also like to have a little tail on it. So I'm just going to escape. I'm going to left click here and I'm just going to drag my mouse over this way. Right? So I'm left clicking and holding and dragging it over. And that's just going to create a little tail for it. Let's go ahead and double click here. Let's go ahead and tell this 2 places. Go ahead and center it there. And I think that's all of the dimensions that I need on this one, right? If you double click your middle mouse wheel, that's your zoom extents, or you can come up here to the top and hit that one as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at sheet 2, and that one should automatically be updated as well. So you see that I have 2 decimal places on all of these, and the one that had the 4. So all of this stuff is actually done for me. And hopefully you enjoyed watching this video, right? So this took us a lot less time to do than what we would typically do in AutoCAD. The beauty about using Inventor, and what I wanted to highlight to you is that this radius, or you have something that needs to be changed, it's a lot easier to change it when you're using a program like Inventor, even SolidWorks, NX, Creo, things of that nature. In the 2D programs, you have to go back and do a lot of manual stuff, right? So if I wanted to change this using AutoCAD, I'd have had to stretch this up, and then this view, I'd have had to kind of recreate some things, right? I'd have had to kind of stretch these lines and do all kinds of little manipulations. But in this, a lot easier to do. Everything changes, because the model is driving the drawing as opposed to you kind of driving everything, right? So enough of me rambling on about this. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please, stay tuned if you like seeing videos like this. And if there's something that I may have not said right, or you quite not understand, or something that you want to see me do, please leave me a comment. And once again, thank you for watching.